Hey guys, welcome back to Angular 10 Spring Boot CRUD full stack application tutorials series. Alright guys, so far we have implemented 4 functionalities: employee list, add employee, update employee, and delete employee. In this video, we're going to implement view employee details functionality. So basically we add view button in actions column. Once we click on view button, it will navigate to the view employee details page. Over there we can able to see a particular employee details. Alright, let's head over to the VS Code IDE and let's quickly create a view employee details component, and let's design a view employee component template to show a particular employee details. Alright, let's head over to the VS Code IDE. Inside the integrated terminal, make sure that you are in a root folder of our application, that is Angular-frontend, and just enter Angular CLI command, ng followed by G for generate, C for component, followed by name of the component, let's say employee details. Hit enter. So this command created 4 files and it also updated app modules file. Alright, so if you expand app folder, inside app folder you can see employee details folder is created. Within employee details 4 files are generated, and also app module is also updated with newly created component in declarations array. So whenever we create a component using Angular CLI, Angular CLI automatically configure a component for that particular module. So in our application we have only one module, that is app module. Alright, now let's go ahead and let's configure a route for employee details component. Go to the app routing module, and here we're going to create a JavaScript object within a routes array, and we configure a route for employee details component. Let's create a JavaScript object with property path, and let's give path as employee details, and we need to get a ID, right? ID of particular employee. So we're going to show a particular employee details, right? For that we're going to need ID of that particular employee, and then we define corresponding component here, that is employee details component. That's it guys, it's very simple. So once we configure route, next we create a view button inside a employee list template. Let's head over to the employee list folder. Within employee list folder we have employee list component template, and here we have a table, right? Within a table we have actions column, and within actions column we have already defined update and delete button. So along with these buttons we'll also create one more button, that is view button. Let me copy this existing delete button and paste it here, and let me change it accordingly. Let's give button name as view, and let's change event handler name here. So this is the on-click event handler, and here we're gonna change the event handler name something like employee details. Pretty simple. And once we click on this view button, this event handler will get called, and let's go and let's define this event handler in employee list component. Employee details, and then we need to get ID, right? ID of type number, and then once we click on view button we should be able to navigate to the view employee details page, right? For that we're going to use a route, and we have already defined a route in one of the previous video for for update operation. Let me just copy the existing line of code, paste it here, Then let me change the route name. Route name we have employee details, right? Employee details. It's pretty simple. So this is the route path we have defined in app routing module. This is, and this is the ID, and that ID we passed here. All right, great. Now let's save the file and let's head over to the browser, and look at here, view button is added. Let me change the Bootstrap CSS class for view button. So instead of danger, let's say info, and save the file. Let's go back to the browser. Yeah, once we click on view button, we should navigate to the view employee details page. All right, and look at here the URL. So this is the path we have configured in app routing module, right? And this is the ID of that particular employee. Well, now what we will do, we'll design a view employee details page, and we'll make a REST API call, and we pass this ID to the REST API. REST API will return an employee object of this particular ID, and we'll populate that employee object on this page. All right, great. Go to the employee details component, and let's go and let's define a properties inside a component, that is ID of type number, and then define the employee property of type employee TypeScript class. Now inside a component we need to retrieve ID, right? ID of that particular employee. For example, so look at here, this is the URL, and we need to get this ID inside a component. For that we are going to use a route. So in one of the previous video I have shown you how to use activated route to get this ID. So similarly, let's go and let's use activated route to get this ID from the route. Let's inject activated route in this component. Activated route, and using route we can get the ID from the route. ID equals to this dot ID equals to route, and then snapshot, and then params, and here we can pass the ID. So this will give you the ID of that particular route. Okay, so once we got the ID, we can pass this ID to the REST API, and REST API will return our employee object of this particular ID. So within an employee service, we have already created get employee by ID REST method, right, which will internally make get employee by ID REST API. Let's go and let's call this method to get a particular employee by ID. All right, let's go and let's inject employee service in employee details component, then a constructor private employee service, and then employee service. Now let's use employee service here. So first we're gonna define the employee object, right? New, and then employee, and here let's use this dot employee service, and then call the method get employee by ID, and let's pass the ID here, and this method returns observable. So let's use a subscribe method to subscribe to the observable, and inside this subscribe method we can handle the response. This is basically a synchronous response. Now let's assign a response of the REST API to the employee object. Now once we got a response of REST API and we populate that response in employee object, let's go to the employee details component template, and here we're going to design view employee details page. Let's say header of the page like view employee details, something like this, and then followed by the div, Let's create one more div, and let's create a label, and this is the bold element, HTML element, and then let's give label name as first name, and then let's use Angular interpolation to access the property of the component. So this is the employee dot first name. So this is the employee property we have defined in a component, right? Employee details component, and this employee property we are going to access in a component template like this. Okay, now similarly let's go ahead and let's display employee last name and email ID as well. Let me copy and paste twice here, and let me change the label last name, and here let's change the property employee dot last name, and this is email ID, right? Email ID, and this is the email ID. It's pretty simple. Let's save the files and let's go back to the browser and let's see how it works. Yeah, it is working. Let me go to the employee list page. From here, if I want to see a John Cena employee details, then I can click on view button and I can able to see a John Cena employee details here. Alright guys, we have successfully implemented view employee details. Let me quickly add an employee here, ram @gmail.com, hit submit, and let's say I want to view ram employee details, and I can click on view button and I can see all the details of ram employee in a separate page. And if you want to navigate to the employee list, you can click on employee list here. Alright guys, we have successfully implemented view employee details functionality. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys in next video.